Hey, everybody. Let me start the Twitter space as well.
Are we supposed to be dancing to this stuff? It's pretty good.
We could put you in the scene if you want to be.
We've got a bad camera. People probably won't even recognize me if we're doing the default. All this expensive equipment and it failed us.
All right. Welcome back, everybody. Let's just get this game going. This is, of course, The Creative Economy. It is our weekly news and interview show. I did have a script somewhere, but I lost it. Oh, here we go. But thank you for joining us. This is our weekly interview series. I was saying we do interview voices and players from the creator economy at large. We discuss key topics impacting both the growth of the sector as well as growth of creators at large. We do go live on Wednesdays at 2 p.m. Pacific time. You can find out more over at created.show. It is the official show page. We do stream on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Clubhouse, and Twitter Spaces. So pick your poison. You like audio or video, you have your choices. We also, as well, will post long-form content. So feel free to head over to creativeeconomy.com if you want to find show notes, links to all of our other stuff, anything that might be interesting in that regard. Let's just do a little bit of bookkeeping here. As you know, this is our 18th episode. Welcome back, everybody. We do have 2 shows a week, by the way. So on Wednesdays, we do our deep dives and interviews with special guests. And on Fridays, we cover the news for an hour. That's at 8 a.m. Pacific time if you want to catch the news show as well. Please give us a follow everywhere and anywhere. We are Creative Economy. You know, that is on Facebook, on Twitter, on Twitch, and on Flipboard as well. So you can find us. And, of course, YouTube. We are doing a drop, by the way. So AMA is the official coin of the Creative Economy show. So if you would like to receive some free AMA coin, it's worth about $1.75 right now or something like that. Feel free to head over, scan the QR code. It's also at bit.ly/AMA drop, AMA-drop-5. By the way, for everyone listening, we are broadcasting live. You can, if you head over to created.show right now, you can also join over there. We will try to bring in questions from Twitter Spaces and Clubhouse. Feel free to DM me on either platform, and we will try to get your question just so I know if you are doing it. Hand raises alone, my friends, are not enough because there's a lot of jokers out there, so I won't respond to only a hand raise. In addition, we do have a Slack. The community is growing little by little every week. So head over here. It's bit.ly/created-slack in case you want to join us. It's a bunch of great builders and founders and some creators as well. It's a chance to stay in touch throughout the week and over time. And without further ado, though, we are today going to be interviewing and chatting with my old friend, old co-worker, Ash Rust, who is now a VC. So without further ado, on stage. Hold on, let me get that out of here. All right. There we go. Ash, how are you?
I'm well, thank you. I like this mist that I have around my terrible laptop camera is pretty fun. Audio visual issues, but the show must go on. I love that we do it live. This is awesome.
This is how you make it work, right?
You're not really authentic until you actually can do it live.
Right. And I just for those people that didn't get to see this, obviously Ken and Greg knew that I had not showed up for this call at all. And we're like, hey man, are you showing up for this interview that you planned for the last couple of weeks with us? It would be great. Yeah, I'm glad we could make it happen.
Well, it's always fun to have you. Ash is a very funny guy if you haven't gotten a chance to hang out with him in person as well. But thank you for joining us today. And welcome to Zealous, by the way. This is your first experience seeing
That's beautiful.
We've been building. But Ash, before we jump in, why don't you tell everyone a little bit about yourself, who you are, a little bit about your background before we've got some questions that came in from the audience. Ken and I have some questions as well. But first, let's hear a little bit more about you.
Sure. So I was born thousands of miles away in the north of the UK in a small town called Blackpool. Many refer to it as the Las Vegas of the North. They would be wrong about that. You don't need to visit. I moved here in 2008, right before Lehman Brothers collapsed, which was a great time, as you can imagine. And had a few degrees in computer science and not much else. So went through some nasty startup failures, and I've got some certain stories about that for sure. Then in 2010, I got super lucky, and a guy called Joe Fernandez asked me to join his company called Klout, where Greg was the VP of product. And that ended up being my first win, where we sold that for a couple $100 million in 2013. So that was a great outcome for his early employees. And then me and some buddies from Oxford started a company called SendHub, which was basically MailChimp for SMS. We went through Y Combinator, raised money from VCs, did all the treadmill stuff that you're supposed to do, according to TechCrunch. And then we sold that in a good outcome in 2015. And then I had 2 exits. I was in my 30s by then. I had a beard, so I had to go into VC, basically. Joined Trinity Ventures in 2016. And then after about 4 or 5 months of working there, they were wonderful about it. They were like, look, you seem sharp, but you can't work here. Excuse me. You can't work here. Why don't we give you money to start your own fund? That way you don't have to work for us. So
is that a pay you to go away kind of thing?
Yeah. I wasn't upset about it. Obviously, it was a great opportunity for me. And then that's where my work in sort of creating really came about. When you start a venture capital firm by yourself, you have to do quite a lot of marketing. And without these social platforms, there's just no way that I would have been able to do the kind of outreach that I needed to do. For someone like me, I have to meet nowadays 1,500 companies. So we started the fund in 2017 on the back of that investment from the Trinity partners, and then raised a $3 million fund. We're now on fund 3. We have $30 million under management. We just led our first Series A and about 40 companies in the portfolio. And yeah, really enjoying it. So like I said, beard in my 30s.
Now, Ash is leaving out one important detail, because I remember it was like my last day at Klout, and I was like, all right, man, we'll see you later. He's like, yeah, I'll see you around. And then fast forward to January, I arrive at YC for the first day, and Ash was there also. And apparently we had both gotten into YC at the exact same time and both at the same batch.
Yeah, crazy coincidence. And Y Combinator 2012 needs its own index fund. We have another company that went public today from our back, Amplitude. Yeah, exactly. Incredible stuff. We have Gusto, Matterport, PlanGrid.
Yeah.
None of them we founded though, Greg, huh?
Do you guys get like some associated like, are you like cool by association, so therefore do you get equity by association? That's how
no equity by association. That's
not how it works in the startup space.
I would have made more off of our batch fund than I did from
right. Yeah. So what they should be doing is issuing NFTs for every batch. So that way, if you have the gold chip just by participation, you get it. Now, I have benefited from this. Obviously, so many of our good friends have done really well and have their own islands, yachts, etc., and also invest in funds. So some of them are investors in my fund, and I'm very grateful for that. For all of you who are listening.
That is awesome.
Wait, they're listening, so they can't see the wink.
Yeah, great
you got to do the sound effect.
Several $1 million. Couldn't you afford a better camera?
Right. Yeah. Thanks, buddy. I appreciate that.
He's just reinvesting everything.
Yeah. We don't even have swag because we're so committed to deploying that capital, putting it to work for you.
Yeah. But Ash, I'm curious though, like, as we're talking about the, your experience from Klout to SendHub as a VC, how have you come to find yourself in the creator economy space, right? And like, what fascinates you from as somebody that's been a builder and now also as an investor?
Yeah, so for me, it was out of necessity. As I said, it was the reality of having to build a marketing engine to meet, more than 1,000 companies a year. Right? The weird thing about venture capital is you are saying no to 99% of the people that you meet. So if you're going to do that, then you've got to meet a lot of people to have some good outcomes from that, because that a lot of the companies that you invest in, probably 90% of them are ultimately going to fail. So even if you're at the early stages, even if you're just one person like me, then you're gonna have to look at maybe 1,000 companies a year. How am I going to find all those companies? I'm going to have to get them to come to me. There's no way I can do 3,000 emails to just randomly reach out. There's no way, as you can probably tell, folks, I'm a handful. So I don't do great in those scenarios where maybe it's a conference like a Y Combinator demo day. That's not going to be the environment where I'm going to beat everybody. I want to spend a bunch of time with you, show that I'm valuable, that I've got some insights. And that's going to require you to perhaps see a little bit of that. Maybe there's the new sporadic customer journey that we see in e-commerce. So out of necessity, I started writing the blog posts, and they were doing well on search, but everyone was always saying, oh, you should tell me more. I'd like to see more of this. And we started seeing a little bit of that hit the mainstream via things like Instagram stories. Can you imagine when that was new? I mean, this is going back a few years now. So when that kind of stuff started happening, it seemed to me like, oh, I could put myself in this position. I could market my capital through a channel that is maybe pretty broad-based and mainstream. It's tempting in those scenarios to do things like, oh, talk about whatever's trending or new, but I've tried to really keep it focused on early stage entrepreneurs, tactical advice. That limits my audience, but it means, the people that I get to talk to from that are very focused on what I'm interested in doing.
And are there any notable? Oh, go ahead, Greg.
Oh, no, I was just going to follow up a little bit on there because I know, Ash, you do produce. So my question was: you're active as a creator, actually, right, producing videos more. Just sort of, what is being a creator? Is there any more that it's sort of unlocked? Do you feel like you get to build better relationships, besides sort of the deal flow, which is obviously, I think, an important part, obviously, in the process. Anything else that comes from that, just insights about being a creator that are valuable to you? Yeah,
I mean, the good and the bad. So instant credibility, I'd say 95% of the phone calls that I have begin with someone talking about a video. I looked on your profile, I saw this video, great insights about X or Y. Even if they're blowing smoke, and I'm sure some of them are, at least it's a point of affinity. It's a really easy way to identify, like, oh, you've done research on me, you understand how I work, what I'm thinking about. So I really like it for that reason. And I think it means that if you're trying to sell yourself without necessarily having to make someone check a reference and do a phone call and schedule that, you can do that well through the video medium. The negative is the haters. I get all kinds of random behavior.
You get haters too, really?
Yeah, I mean, all of it. I think once you get above 10,000 on any platform, you're going to start to see that, right? And I'm not the person who wants to be glad-handing at conferences, as I said, and so that translates to not being loving, having to deal with people who are maybe a little bit difficult, a little bit off the wall. And so you get some strange behavior. We had it yesterday. We were in a Twitter space, and we had some guy who was just screaming about how happy he was to meet me every time he got put up to be a speaker. So it was like, we got to dial that back. And obviously some of the emails you get when you say no to somebody, there's hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe millions of dollars at stake in venture capital. So people get understandably hot under the collar in those scenarios.
Right. So your Sterling Road has, when I looked at your profile on LinkedIn, it was very centric on like B2B type of thing, right? You're more in that enterprise type of stuff. So how do you reconcile that with kind of with the creator space as well? And as I'm starting to go down this rabbit hole, it's almost like the creator space is like a B to B to C type of approach, right? And on one hand, as a builder, you're marketing to creators, which Greg and I have talked on the show many times about creators being entrepreneurs themselves, right, and at which point they are marketing to their fans, which are obviously the consumers. So right, how do you see that the B2B landscape in the creator space, and what advice would you give to builders who are trying to reach, who are trying to pitch VCs that are primarily focused on the B2B space, but want to dip their toes into creator space?
Yeah, so I think there's a ton of mileage, as you said, in the B2B2C space. There's an awful lot of ways that creators need to reach and manage their audience, especially as it approaches any kind of scale. Very, very challenging to do that without a wide array of tools. And those tools tend to need to come from other platforms rather than you build them yourself, right? They're not going to be email, spreadsheets, they're not enough anymore for that. So there's an awful lot of mileage there. And I'm always interested in hearing those kinds of pitches. Pico is a good example of a company I invested in that is in that space. I think the other thing is that there's an awful lot of B2B problems here that are really, really hard. And there's an awful lot of value, even in if you solve it for a niche. So content moderation, payments, subscriptions, international distribution, localization, regulation compliance. There's tons of stuff that you can do here these people are approaching audiences that are much larger than what we see on traditional TV, and there was much more infrastructure behind them. That's not going to be acceptable in the new economy, right? No one wants to have American Idol numbers on their YouTube video and then that entire team of people behind. No way, that's not going to happen anymore. There's going to be a ton of software, a ton of hardware behind these kinds of things, and that's going to be B2B tools. I don't want to say X or Y is going to happen because I'm the worst person. Don't let VCs tell you about the future, folks, please. Sectors where we see the problems are the sectors that the big social networks are having trouble with now. So when those cross over into to become the creator's own problem, that's when we're going to see a lot of those B2B tools become really relevant, I think.
Yeah, let's a little quick follow on, I guess. There, SendHub, obviously, I think put you in a very unique position because you were building tooling for the SMB space, which was actually as disconnected and disjointed in many ways as sort of the creator spaces.
Right.
Any key takeaways or advice you see sort of or parallels like in those?
Yeah, we actually had tons of creators on SendHub. It was we had plenty of people, for example, pastors all across Christian churches in the American South were using SendHub to reach their flock daily with new messages. And so that was very important to them. Deliverability, simplicity, when we added things like media messaging, replies, all those kinds of things, voice messages, all of that stuff really mattered to them a great deal. And I think that the main lesson that I learned during those times was that actually simplicity is the most important thing in terms of providing tools. If you think about how long it took for someone like Spotify to provide podcasting, you can really wait a long time to add a new feature. If you've got something that's working for people, even if customers are begging for it, wait till you really plateau on distribution before you go out. Because we tried to add a lot of features for creators and maybe some of them used it, but it cluttered up things for a lot of others. And the other story I'll give about that is that the things that we had to build by necessity became core features. So the first version of SendHub, right before we got into Y Combinator, before you and I rekindled our relationship, Greg, we couldn't get anyone to use SendHub because it was that bad. The interface was that terrible. People couldn't get through the sign-up process and send. So what we said to people was, look, okay, how about this? You can use it for free, but send us an email with the message you want and then the people you want to send it to, and we'll send it for you. Just tell us the time. Right. So that became scheduled messages. That's what we called it.
Building scale.
Yeah, exactly. And so the fact that you could type a message on our mobile app, tap schedule, and it could go out to 10,000 people tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. before you wanted to get up, that was really, really powerful for people. And I was amazed at how often it was used, how often it was a differentiator for us versus other people. Anybody could use that on our system the first day, the first 5 minutes.
Well, Instagram still doesn't have an iPad app.
Exactly. I think that's a great example.
It's proof of your point, right?
Which is actually surprising because when you look at the amount of people in the pre-pandemic times, when you go traveling, they're taking photos using their iPads. So naturally,
you have to be over 55 to otherwise your iPad stops you from taking a photo. I don't know if you know that. That's what the fingerprint scanner is actually for.
Yeah, that's some good Apple privacy feature right there.
Yeah, exactly.
Forget everything else. It's like I don't care about the ads or anything like this. This feature has to be the thing. It's like stop being a progressive commercial. Like, look.
Right.
Yeah. Hey Ash, I had a question. So last week we had Josh Constein on our show, right? Another venture capitalist, former journalist turned investor. And I asked him this question about like what kinds of trends is he seeing in terms from his time as someone has studied it in school to reporting about it for a decade to now investing in it. Now, I want to ask you that similar question because you have a slightly different perspective because I mean, you weren't a reporter, you weren't a journalist, but you're a builder, you are an investor. You've mentored and advised a bunch of entrepreneurs about this, about building their companies, and obviously you are a creator by your own right. So what would you say are there any notable trends that you've seen in the creator economy space, and are there anything that's significant that we should know about?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously what everyone's talking about from my perspective. I think NFTs are a toy right now because they're a JPEG delivery tool, probably for money laundering most of the time. But they've completely changed the question that was absolutely relevant and on everyone's lips when I was a teenager, which is like, how do you own a song, right? How do you write this? How do you distribute it? How do you give it to people, but only if they're allowed to have it? And NFTs and this idea of status around ownership of media completely upends this question. And now it becomes an opportunity for the creator to generate way more revenue than they ever could by providing something unique around their creation that only they can provide, can be exclusive. And I'm really, really excited about it. I think the B2B opportunities here are just huge because no musician, no artist, no sculptor, no architect has the tools to create those NFTs as necessary, but plenty of businesses will give them those tools, and that's what I'd love to invest in. But I think that that's a huge, huge change, and the change in copyright as well. Like, imagine a world where anybody has access to any music they want, but the people who that particular song means the most to, those people have paid thousands of dollars for their particular unique experience around it. It's perfect.
Cool. Greg, do we have any questions from the audience that they would like to ask?
I don't see Abhinav here, but we did have a question from him. So let's bring that question up actually. So he actually had a question about revenue models. He said, for startups building for the creator economy, there are two main pricing structures. One is SaaS, monthly or per user pricing. The second is income-based take rates, percentage of revenue somehow, right? What should drive founders to choose one or the other? And I guess I'll add a little bit here, is the hybrid approach viable in your mind?
Yeah, they're all viable. It really depends on who you're going after, I think. If you are going after the whales, if you only need 5-10 customers to get to $1 million in revenue, then you probably want to be focused on the SaaS element, right? You're going to be charging people $10,000, maybe even $15,000, $25,000 a month for your service. If you're going to grab every micro influencer on Instagram, then it's probably better to give it away for free and then just take a percentage of the income that they generate, because you can ask for quite a bit because most of these people aren't really making any money. So you taking 10, 15% won't be much of a problem. What should drive you towards that decision is absolutely nothing to do with what I'm saying. It should be based on customer feedback, right? You should take these hypotheses to your customers, the people who are engaged already, ideally. So first of all, just get it live. Don't worry about pricing it. And then once it is live and people are using it, they're engaging with it, they're reliant on it, then ask them how they want to pay for it and look at that feedback against how they're using it. And you want to look at that across the totality of your user base as well, because individual users will lie, but they just don't do it on purpose.
Absolutely true. I guess, one of the challenges we do see, and I guess I'm curious how you as an investor maybe sort of see this pressure. There's some price compression, it seems, happening, right? Like downward pressure on sort of the traditional model, Patreons, Cameos, et cetera, where they charge like a large OnlyFans, et cetera. And so it can become kind of a race to the bottom, right? To some degree. If someone's modeling, I know you spend a lot of time talking about like how to model, for example, for your business. If someone's modeling out, but they have to like sort of anticipate like, depression in sort of their take rate. How do you think like you defend that? Or sort of that sort of idea?
Yeah, the only answer I've ever heard for this that's acceptable is go premium. Go aggressively premium, right? If you are seeing yourself in a race to the bottom, if you are competing on the basis of price alone, you are in deep water against people that have very, very deep pockets who will, and we've seen this over and over again, how companies like Salesforce will bleed out an entire market just so they can keep acquiring all the companies, and then it's gone. Oracle's done the same thing. Mm-hmm. So repeat the question one more time.
Yeah, I think you answered it, actually. It's just like, how do you defend against like a market environment that is moving downwards?
So to add on to the premium element of that, I'd say look for the people who are your power users. Mm-hmm. See if there's a niche within there that you can latch onto perhaps, and then offer them additional services beyond that. I don't think that Stripe would be in the position they were in if they were just doing credit card processing.
Gotcha. So continue to buckle on more value. Arnold, I do see you
around the customer feedback in particular, like, and it has to be people who are already engaged, right? You won't want to go to like a new, if you say, oh, these guys are pushing us out on price, let's go to a completely new market. I don't think that's going to work. You want to go to your best customers who are sticking with you probably for some reason and see if you can provide them with more services.
Yeah, Arnold, thanks for joining us. I'm not sure if you had a question, sort of snuck you up here.
Arnold?
Arnold?
You're on mute, Arnold, if you are interested.
All right. We'll leave Arnold there. If he chimes back in, we'll jump back to his question as well.
Yeah, you had a ton of questions on the website. It was kind of scary, actually, what was going on. I discovered that earlier today when I was prepping for the call. I was like, these people.
Well, Ken and I also use the question tool as a way for us to put the questions out there so people can.
Okay, all right. So it's not just my loyal fan base of haters coming in.
Yeah. We did invite all your haters, though.
It's a long list. We have a meeting in a phone booth every year.
Yeah. Here, Ken has actually a good question, reminiscing on the old days.
I mean. So I think it is harkens back to your days as at Klout, and where everything was all based off of I think with Joe and Ben, the founders of Klout, mm-hmm. what their goal was laudable to a certain degree, where they're like, what Klout was like, here's how you can put a number on your influence. Back when was like what true to definition what actual influence was. Then all of a sudden it got that word got very much perverted or distorted, and Klout became very much a punchline for a lot of people. But from your time there to now, can you walk us through like how do you see that definition of an influencer kind of evolving since then? Since like kind of like, hey, we're trying to put quantify what that is, like kind of put a label on how influential one person is, and to now being like, hey, you're a creator, you're this personality on the internet, people flock and follow to you. Like, what does it actually mean to be an influencer these days?
By the way, Ash's job was director of ranking, so.
Well, there you go. Well, yeah, but that's like asking someone at Google, like the person that ranks search, like, hey, how do you figure this stuff out? Like, how did you determine, something ranked higher than another and was more? Why was Justin Bieber more influential than me?
Well, there's a lot of reasons, Ken, but I don't know if we want to go into them in public. I think the main thing that's changed high level on the influencer definition is they're social media native now, right? Before social media influencers in 2010, 2011, maybe up to 2012, were mostly people who had come from some other medium, like Obama or Justin Bieber. There was something else that was important about them, and thus they were important on social media. Nowadays, the vast majority of these influencers came up purely on social media. They live and die by the platforms that they're on. And that's just a very, very different way of looking at it. Also, it's changed in terms of who and what they do. So back when we were doing Klout, like we would often talk about like the dude who knows how to buy TVs, right? Like there's this person in your town that everyone goes to ask about a TV. Like that person needs to have a high Klout score. Obviously today, now they're like walking around ancient ruins in Pompeii, taking pictures in scantily clad clothes. Like it's a very different approach. So the market has changed. Like it's much more like the gossip mag is a large majority of the influencer material, like what you used to see at the supermarkets. It's a much bigger market. And now people came up entirely on social media. And I think that gives us the best and the worst of humanity.
Do you think that now, since the world is all a buzz about reboots, do you think now a new Klout could emerge in some way, shape, or form? And could it actually provide could it provide like something actually definitive and valuable information?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of opportunity for something like that. There's no way that the social networks will ever give anybody that much data ever again. I mean, we had contracts for lots of data from Facebook, lots of data from Twitter. And I think nowadays that's just unpalatable distribution for a lot of good reasons. And so it's very hard for somebody to do that. And I think given how fragmented social media is. I mean, we all thought Facebook was invincible, right? Until TikTok came along. And then given that it's so fragmented, it's hard to see how that's going to play out.
Awesome. I do see Abhinav is back. And so he had a question. It is a somewhat lengthy one. So I'm going to try to put up. Abhinav, do you want to just ask it? Let me see. I'll put it up here though. But he was referring sort of to your. Oh, there we go.
Oh well, you can barely see you on the screen now. So
we're getting enough of me, I think.
Awesome. Hey Ash. So this is basically kind of linking into your investment thesis that you're kind of a little bit more hands-on involved with the pre-seed investments. You know, you're a little bit like fewer investments, more time spent. So thinking about the coaching that you give those guys. What we talk a lot about in our crowd is, you know, creators starting to think a little bit more like startup founders, being more structured, being more organized in that sort of business-minded way as they start to grow beyond just kind of getting lucky. And then how do you go once you've been lucky with your online success? Right. Is there tips that you give to startup founders that you think would translate well to creators that you might want to have a couple of here?
Well, I mean, when you wrote that question, you said, like, should we as builders do something for creators? And I think the first question I would ask is, do you need to? I would actually say, you know, can we put the question up? Because obviously I'm totally going to forget it otherwise.
You need to lower your head a little, though, so you fit in the frame.
Yeah, I'm getting old, right? I mean, it's just for men, but there's a lot of gray under here, honestly, folks. So do we, when you say, should builders be doing things to help creators get more organized? Well, only if that's the purpose of your software. I think instead make your software simple and easy to use, and then make it critical to their workflow, and then it will be used heavily. Hopefully by extension, then your product will cause them to be more organized. If you want to build project management software or task management software for creators, I would say good luck. I mean, that is project management and task management is already a really hard market, right? Like, think about the people that have built companies around that. They tend to either, there's an awful lot of acquisitions in that space, or, you know, maybe you founded Facebook before you founded Asana. So it's an elite group of people. I would be worried about that market. I also don't think it's particularly big or revenue generating in the creative space, because they would expect to pay a small amount of money probably per month for that. And then I think it depends a lot on who you're going after. If you're going after people who are generating millions of dollars, this is a big business, multiple employees, that kind of thing, multiple streams of income, then maybe it does make sense to provide suites of tools that allow them to visualize and organize. But if it's, you know, essentially an SMB service, then I would say be laser focused on the narrow tool that you can, because those tend to be the best products, right? GoDaddy is maybe the only SMB tool that isn't that way, and nobody really likes using it, right?
Just a quick follow-up, I guess, Ash. In your mind, just framing-wise, do you see, and obviously there's a spectrum here, I guess I'm just kind of wondering what the dumbbell looks like, right? Of creators, do you view them as more individuals, SMBs, or something else?
Well, I think the vast majority of people are just looking for the social status of it, right? As we saw at Klout, there's an awful lot of people who act like they're making a living at it who just aren't. Then there's a very small number of people who are, I guess, SMB owners, like it's their livelihood or it's their side hustle. It's kind of like your Etsy store owner. There's a lot of people who make crafts, but there's very few people who have a store. And then obviously the vast majority of us follow one or two or three or four of these Uber influencers who are generating millions of dollars from these platforms from a number of different mechanisms. Maybe they're advertising, maybe they are using shared revenue streams, or maybe they're merchandising or doing something off platform.
Interesting.
But it's a very, very wide funnel at the bottom, right? The people that can capture that area, the GoDaddy supplier to this group, it's an incredibly large market. And there's a lot of people will compete for it, but you're probably going to distribute to that by literally Super Bowl ads, as crazy as it sounds.
Interesting. So I know you were an investor in Pico.
Yeah.
Do you see them like sort of operating? I would imagine that that's where they do fit is sort of, I know they frame themselves kind of as an operating system. They are kind of that wide sort of broad spectrum thing to build upon.
Yeah. Right? On the surface of it, although the majority of their traffic and revenue, it's kind of an 80-20 system, right? Like Twilio looks the same way. Oh, you know, they sell text messages for 1 cent. It must be lots of small people, but actually more than a third of the revenue comes from WhatsApp. And it's kind of the same thing here.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Yeah. There's a lot of whales, I guess, right? Like in the creator economy unto itself. Ken, did you have any other questions?
Yeah, I'm kind of curious in terms of like what is standing out in your mind in terms of these types of companies, right? I mean, we talked about earlier in the show, you know, there's all these opportunities for builders to kind of reach like from a B2B to C type of approach, but it's very much a wild west type of vibe. I mean, that shouldn't surprise anybody. I mean, it's like when you see new ecosystems or new economies, quote unquote, you're going to start to see a flood of people building for it. There's always a problem to be solved. But then at some point, as we all know, that these companies start to blend together, you know, and then hopefully the stronger ones will prevail, or so on and so forth, and some will pivot or whatnot. So what are the areas that you see kind of really standing out? How do you see what advice would you give to your clients, to startups that you mentor, that are like, oh my God, like there's how do I compete with the LinkedIn bios? How do I compete with the next, Twilio for creators or SendHub for creators? How do I stand out in this crowd? What do I need to do to really hone in on the real problem as opposed to going after the low-hanging fruit?
Yeah, I would say passion, and you need to find a niche to stand out. So, if you're going to work on this for a long, long time, you may find areas of the business that are really valuable. But obviously, it's really hard to work at a company like Jewel. And so, not a lot of people do. They don't choose to do that. And so you have to believe in the area that you're working on, believe in the product that you're working on. And that's the number one most important. And it's actually okay to go into a really competitive market if you believe that, because you're likely to have an okay outcome, even if it goes wrong. The next thing is you need to pick a niche. So you want to survey various different niches, maybe 4 or 5 within the area that you want to work in, and try and find out what the core problems are they're having with the existing solutions. Is that something that you can technically solve? Is it something that would be hard for other people to solve? Is it something they may not want to bother solving? Is it, again, something that matters to you? When you do that kind of feedback, maybe you're talking to 50 or 100 people, you're going to get an awful lot of information, and it should be very clear. A lot of the time, startups end up doing this by accident, by building a product that nobody wants, going around trying to sell it, and everyone says, hey, I'd actually like this other thing instead, and then they go build that. And avoid that problem by just going and talking to customers first. Find your niche, and then don't be afraid from there. I mean, all the big companies ultimately are going to suck. They're not going to be able to hire people as good as you, nowhere near as committed as you. And remember, like over and over again, we've seen that even if they can hire people who are more talented, your commitment level tends to drive outcomes in software businesses and hardware businesses. It seems just above a reasonable baseline. So find a niche and you'll survive. I'd say as long as you're willing to be, wholly committed to the business, which is, again, very, very tough. People forget that it's not just a matter of saying, oh, well, commit to the business. Obviously, that means like telling your family you're not going to make any money for a long time and a lot of other very hard conversations in your life.
But that's probably good advice just in general, not just to create a
yeah, I got lots of those pearls, actually. I was eating fortune cookies for the whole of lunch just to make sure I had some.
By the way, Arnold, welcome to the stage. Did you have a question for Ash? Oh, you're on mute. Are you a robot?
Oh, please tell me you put that filter on deliberately. That would be amazing. No, it's perfect. Actually, I kind of like it. So
those are the new Apple AirPods built with the Alexa Astro robot.
Oh no, Arnold, how about this? Just drop your question in the Q&A block, and we'll go to it after. Sorry about that.
No problem at all. Remember, I started off with this. I can't be mad at anybody for AV issues now.
Yeah, well, this is beta software, everyone. So
I don't think that was you. This is beta software is some of the most reliable video conferencing I have seen. This is great stuff. Genuinely, if you're an investor and you're listening to this, you should be at work. And secondly, you should talk to these guys.
But I guess I have one more question. I think, relatively speaking, forgetting sort of creators, some of this, more broadly speaking, we do see more people shifting to entrepreneurship. Do you think, and I think this is sort of part of what Abhinav was getting after as well, was just, do you see there any other opportunities emerging as sort of like, I believe like there was a statistic that during COVID or post-COVID, like the rate of entrepreneurship is like skyrocketed, right? And so this is not like gig workers per se anymore. Like they're not necessarily working on the platform. They're just like, I want to work for myself. Yeah. Any other insights or thoughts or areas that you're looking at, like from a B2B point of view?
Yeah, I mean, I think the marketplaces are just a huge, and labor distribution is a huge opportunity. I agree with you. I think there's a lot of people who during COVID maybe were forced to live on a lot less money for a long period of time and realized that they could actually govern their future if they were willing to do that, and a lot of them are. And so there's an awful lot of marketplace platforms out there right now that allow people to do that. But the tools that allow you to build an entire workforce in those areas are just starting to come up. And I think, well, as you bring in things like localization, international law, those kinds of things make it a lot more complicated. And of course, we haven't even started to cross the barriers of like, if people in the same company speak different languages and none of them are bilingual, like how do you solve that problem? Like software can solve all of those kinds of problems. And so I'm really excited about all the various different tools that are going to allow people to either be entrepreneurs and build businesses remotely and without having to necessarily commit in the same way, or be solopreneurs. And you're going to see a lot of these kinds of marketplace solutions come about where they can almost be Twilio for labor whenever they choose to, based on their specific skill set. We've seen some of that with things like Upwork, but that's no different than 25 years ago when we had Rent-A-Coder. It's a better interface, but there's an awful lot more opportunity here where we're going to have broad-based credentials that everyone can trust, that are centralized or at least trusted by some third party. Same as we with credit cards, right? Once we have that kind of thing, I think that we're going to be able to see a lot more transferability of skills, because an awful lot of people are stuck with their particular company because that's where their credibility comes from. If you're a lawyer, you probably have to be at a good law firm. If you're an investment banker, you have to be at Goldman Sachs, right? Like these kinds of things can really quickly break down. If there's a fact that, there's a ranking that demonstrates that you are the 33rd best iBanker, it doesn't matter whether or not you're at Goldman Sachs. So I think we're seeing an awful lot of people move into that space, and I think there's going to be an awful lot of tools that come about that make it even easier for people to do that, and I'm really excited about it. I think we are like the Etsy shop in the eBay store is like the very first nugget of that process. We are going to see billion-dollar, trillion-dollar companies that are entirely made up of labor that moves in and out, right? That are entirely filled with solopreneurs working their own hours, however they choose.
Yeah, there's two categories that I'm particularly interested in. I think one is just operations as a service, because I feel like, having worked and talked to many creators now, a lot of them don't want to, like, the minutia of like business is sort of like the part that
right.
most, right? And so a lot of them want more ways to operationalize, or sort of if they could outsource that. And we haven't seen as many fractionalized sort of operations, right? Like we see fractionalized like CFOs and other services, marketing, et cetera. But someone to bring all the pieces together seems like that router kind of technology seems like a missing piece. The other part I'm curious about from your point of view is education, right? Because like, it seems like we're seeing an unbundling of school as well now, because like these micro skills you need, which you never got, right? You now need to pick them up. And so there seems like another opportunity in education as well.
Yeah, I wonder if YouTube's already won that battle. I mean, I can't think of a single time where me or someone I know is like, oh, I have a problem. Like, you try and Google it and you know it's not going to work. You're going to end up on some spam recipe site reading about someone's aunt. Don't do it. Just go straight to YouTube, type your question, and there's going to be 7 videos, right, with 46 views from, again, someone in Illinois who's telling you how to do it. It's like that's adult education now, since face-to-face meetings went away, especially in finance. I think there's huge opportunities there. I do worry with education because of the long sales cycles, because the students are inherently, low on disposable income. Whether or not it's not going to already be come through as being a part of another existing large scale platform that can effectively fund it, as like YouTube can. But I mean, if someone makes it happen, so be it. There's definitely room for another, like there was Blackboard. I mean, we now have these income share agreement schools coming out, and there's dozens of those, like Lambda School, Make School, etc. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for that to go down a level where there's individual coaching. We're seeing certainly a lot of life coaches on Instagram and that kind of thing. So that's the combination of creator and solopreneurism. But yeah, I mean, I think there's a huge amount of opportunity there for that to be developed over time. We are, again, at the very beginning of this. And I think that people need to understand that Web3 is like the crypto element and the blockchain is the tools behind the creators. Like, some crypto people think the interfaces are going to change. Like, look at the best wallets. Like, people say, oh my God, this new wallet is amazing. It's just, it's like the same as the photo apps from 10 years ago. It's literally like, I mean, come on, folks. Star Trek already wrote the book on what interfaces are going to look like. Let it go.
Abhinav, did you have another question, by the way? Oh, you're on mute.
Nothing for me.
Okay. Oh, Arnold, you're back. I see.
Wired headphones now.
Can we try this kicking it old school now?
There we go. Oh, yeah.
Are we good?
Beep, boop, beep, all right, Arnold. Shoot your shot, my friend.
Yes. So, Ash, this is an amazing conversation so far. I'm just curious. There's a lot of, obviously, startups that have kind of jumped into the creator space over the last year, just to really, with the core mindset of helping creators to monetize and to make a living, right? And so I'm curious, just when you look at that landscape of all of us builders in there trying to help, are there any spaces that you just see where we haven't paid enough attention, or that, like, just sort of these big gaping holes where it's like nobody's addressed that yet, and it's just we need to maybe focus in some of those areas, just especially given that you are a creator yourself?
I would say that there's like there's a market for the gap between QuickBooks and Excel. Big market for QuickBooks and Excel. I think, was that someone hitting like a punchline at the same time as me speaking? Yeah.
Song, like the Land Down Under song.
Yeah. So yeah, there's an awful lot of people that try and run their books, their first level of accounting, through Excel. There's people that, if you're running a startup that's raised 500K or more, you're going to use, I would recommend Puzzle, one of my companies, but you're going to use that, or QuickBooks or something similar. But there's an awful lot of people who'll never get that far, right? Or whose my first accounting software would really be helpful to them. Like, they just enter transactions and it's done. And I think that's a huge opportunity. I've seen a few businesses try that, but I really believe that would be the entry point for if you're going to build the suite as well. That would be the way that I would go, because you might also be able to roll in basic legal, business registration, pay at point of sale, something like that. But yeah, it does seem like an obvious area to me.
Yeah, just a general withholdings. We hear these stories all the time about creators who weren't aware that you had to pay taxes or that you couldn't, deduct all of that stuff, right? And so they hold in the bag later. By the way, that's definitely happening to all the crypto people soon too.
Yeah. Don't sell, folks.
So you've mentioned some crypto things here in the past, and I know as we're sort of coming down to the end of the hour, I am curious. So what are your thoughts, I guess, relatively speaking, about NFTs, social tokens, some of these other things, not necessarily just purely for creators, but obviously creators, I think, are going to be one cohort of individuals who are ushering this into the world. So and I know you've been bullish on crypto for ages now.
Yeah, exactly. Definitely a big deal for us since like 2013. I mean, I just see it as an enormous opportunity for creators because it answers a lot of the hard questions. It allows you to monetize your real true believers in a way that just wasn't possible before. And it doesn't involve additional use of your time at scale, right? Like used to be that musicians could only really make money from concerts. Well, that's time, right? You can only do 300 concerts a year and then you'll have no family life. But that's not that. This allows, through crypto, blockchain solutions, those kinds of things, it allows us to create status around things that people really care about. So if you've built a big audience, if you've got an audience that's devoted to you, then you can live a much more stable life by being a creator. Now, that's really important because remember, 10 years ago, being an entrepreneur was nuts, right? I'm brown. I was under a lot of pressure not to be an entrepreneur, let me tell you, right? And then nowadays it's considered a normal career because there's a lot of good examples. Creators are in the same boat, but if we can get that to be a stable opportunity, right, where your Instagram channel plus your Etsy store plus your NFT work is enough for you to credibly do that. I mean, imagine a world where people who, like the person who was just painting when you were in college and didn't want to do their philosophy degree or was just on their guitar the whole time. Imagine if they could make that viable. I mean, that's a good world, I think. So I'm really excited about that opportunity because I get to pursue what I really care about. And I know how much more work you can do and how much more progress you can make when you're in that position. So creators being able to make a real living, even on small audiences, is the promise of crypto. One of the main use cases that I see of crypto and the promise of crypto for the creator economy as a whole.
Very interesting.
Ash, is crypto or Web3 the promised land for not only the new tech, but also for creators and builders, right? It kind of seems every time we're talking now, we're seeing that the tech industry move more and more into blockchain and crypto and everything. And I'm not saying that blockchain technology doesn't serve its purpose. It certainly does. But is it one of those must-have ingredients that every company needs to have now? Right?
No, not at all. No, I mean,
so
I think IBM trying to put a store on Second Life, like back in the day, waste of time, right? Like most companies do not need a Fortnite skin in their life. This is a new level, a new opportunity for people to monetize. And in the same ways, Web 1.0 still exists. This web page is HTML, right? Yes, there's an awful lot of additional Web 2.0 tools on it, like real-time video. Web 3.0 is part of what you're doing, right? Allowing your audience, the people who are promoting it for you, to get a share of the profits in the future. But it's not the whole thing. And I think that's what people who are getting upset about it, they miss that point. It's like, just because we're talking about it a lot doesn't mean that it's the only piece of the puzzle. It's just a new way of us thinking about some parts of this. And that's really exciting because there are a bunch of problems with the previous stuff. You've been telling us about these problems. Someone fix them. Excellent. Let's work on that.
So as an investor,
it's a Half-Life skin company.
Yeah, it does need to be a Sterling Road Fortnite skin, and we've talked about it a lot.
So as an investor, talking to startups, so let's say a startup, would you be more inclined? Say they're both the same company, right? Would you be more inclined to say like, oh, the company that may be incorporating a Web3 strategy, right, or some element or component to it, versus a regular company is like, look, we're just going to build off of social media and a website. That's it. We won't have this decentralized aspect. We're not even thinking about that right now. I mean, all things being equal.
I completely understand the point. And no Web 3.0 inclusion does not grant you like capital. Absolutely not. Like what I'm interested in is engagement, like reliance. Your users, the people who need it every day, can't do without it. And I think that if you have a Web 3.0 way of expressing that, that's awesome. But if the best way of expressing that doesn't require you to have blockchain involved, then great. I don't care. I haven't done much on the investment side there. It's a lot of my personal stuff. It's a lot of my thought life because I think that stuff is coming up. And I want to be at the forefront of it. But I also spend a lot of time in Europe because I think there's a lot of good startups coming in Europe. You know what I mean? It's the same. I call it the same kind of like opportunity for me. It's I think that it's very dangerous to change your company and your strategy around that premise of this is a trend that's hot and investors are going to like it because of that. You're going to get a bad investor or you're going to get a lot of turndowns.
I would agree. Well, I know we're pushing on time and just insensitive to your time, Ash. I do want to thank Abhinav and Arnold for joining us today, asking some great questions. Arnold, thank you as always for the the comical relief as well. Mr. We appreciate it. And by all means, if you always come back, we always love having you guys with us as well. We'll see you soon. Ash, it's been a great conversation. I know, I know your area of focus is not purely in the creator space, but there's so many analogs to, sort of generally good business practices ultimately, right? And building a good startup. And I feel like we're this interesting convergence point. And so I think all of your expertise and experience is probably just becoming even more relevant to a bigger audience of people now. So we just want to say thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. It was great. I really enjoyed it. And it has been way too long since I've seen you guys. I noticed you haven't invited me to dinner or anything. So,
well, I live in Denver now, we're not even nearby.
Come meet us. We'll meet us at the old Klout office.
Yeah. All right, folks. Well, great. Thank you so much for having me. It was great to meet everybody. I really appreciate the conversation. It was a lot of fun today. And, please feel free to edit this out and exclude me if you want to just include the questions. I won't be offended.
No. By the way, how can Ash, just before you go, how can people reach you if they want to pitch you or something like that? Yeah,
just search for my name, Ash Rust, on Twitter or LinkedIn, ASHRUST, or you can just Google that. I'm also a tree disease, hurts ash trees. But apart from that, you'll find me. I'm not kidding. Look it up.
And the programming language,
of course. But yeah, find me on Twitter, Ash Rust, or LinkedIn. I'd love to connect. And my email address is ash@sterlingroad.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Guys, bye.
Bye-bye. All righty, Ken. Well, that was a great episode.
Who brought that guy on here?
I don't know. We lucked out to have someone as fun and smart as Ash to join us today.
Yep.
I will also let's go back. We are getting to next week. What wrong one? I need to push this button. Up next, though, next week we do have Goldie Chan from Warm Robots. She's been an amazing LinkedIn creator and instructor. She also has a new role, which I don't think she's announced yet. So hopefully she'll share that with us next week when she does get here. So thank you everybody for being here. In case you don't, if you want to catch the news, we do our weekly news roundup on Fridays at 8. And just coming up, just so you get a sense of who else will be here, Joe Hurricane from, I can't say his name. So from Issue,
yep.
On October 13th, we do have Amber Case from Unlock Protocol joining us on October 20th. And Peter Shankman will be here on October 27th. By all means, we are always looking for more guests, sometimes to drop in, sometimes to come and ask questions. There is no reason for you not to come and participate in the show. It is a real-time experience, not just a one-time format. But head over to createdeconomy.com/guest list if you'd like to actually, put your name in the hat to be on the show in the future. I believe, Ken, though, we are booked up for the rest of the year. We are planning a holiday party for like December 15th, which will be here on, in Zealous with everyone present. So by all means, we do hope that you'll come by, but we are going to be starting to book season 2 for next year, starting in January. So thank you everybody for being here. It's been a pleasure, Ken, and we will see you all soon. All righty.
Peace out. Thanks,
everybody.